When a buyer asks an AI who to trust, does the answer look anything like page 1 of Google? We wanted to find out. So we took 50 real buyer questions, the kinds of questions people ask when they are comparing options, looking for an expert, or deciding what to buy. Questions like, what is the best AI visibility platform? How do I get my company mentioned in an AI answer? Should I hire a generative engine optimization agency or use software? Then we compared what Google surfaced with what Gemini, Perplexity, and Google AI overviews recommended. Not keywords, not traffic estimates. The actual names, sources, and recommendations inside the answer. The result was not a cleaner version of search, it was a different map. In this film, I'll show you where the map split, which sources AI kept pulling into the answer, and what that means if your brand is already strong or still trying to break into the category. I'm with ReachLLM. Let's start with the gap. First, a quick note on the method because it matters. This was a 50-question comparison between Google Search and 3 AI answer surfaces, Gemini, Perplexity, and Google AI overviews. ChatGPT was not part of this specific study. For each buyer question, we recorded the recommendations, opened the cited sources, classified the source type, and checked how much the result set matched what Google ranked. That gives us 2 different layers. Google is primarily organizing pages. An AI answer is synthesizing a response from a larger source pool and choosing which names and claims make the final cut. So we tracked 4 things: the question, the recommendation, the source, and the overlap. This is important because a brand can be visible at one layer and absent at the other. You can rank and still not be recommended. You can also be cited from a page that was never the obvious Google winner. The study does not say SEO has stopped mattering. It says the answer layer adds a second selection process, and that process deserves its own measurement. Here is the headline finding. Across these 50 buyer questions, Google and the AI answers recommended the same companies only 24% of the time. 24%, put differently, roughly 3/4 of the recommendation space changed when the interface changed from links to a synthesized answer. That does not mean Google and AI are disconnected. It means a high ranking is not a guarantee that your name survives the compression into one answer. On average, an AI response in this study drew from about 24 sources. Yet only around 1 in 6 of the sources AI cited were also top-ranked Google pages. The answer is not simply copying the first result. It is assembling evidence from a wider field, then deciding which sources and entities are useful for that particular response. For a marketing team, that creates a blind spot. If your dashboard stops at rankings, you can look healthy while the buyer's actual answer names somebody else. The new question is not only, where do we rank? It is, are we present in the sources and language the answer is built from? When we classified the sources, the pattern became more concrete. Listicle roundups made up 39% of the source mix. Third-party blogs accounted for another 22%. Those 2 formats alone represented a large share of the material AI used to make comparisons and recommendations, and the single most cited source was YouTube, with Reddit close behind. That is a useful correction to the idea that AI visibility is just technical SEO with a new label. The answer can pull from your website, but it can also rely on publishers, reviewers, communities, videos, transcripts, and other pages where your category is being discussed. The practical implication is not to flood the web with generic listicles. It is to map the real questions, then make sure strong. Specific evidence exists in the source environments an engine can retrieve. A comparison page should actually compare. A guide should answer the question early. A video should say the important conclusion clearly enough that its transcript stands on its own, and independent sources should have something verifiable to point to. The unit of competition is no longer only your page, it is the source ecosystem around the answer. Now let's widen the lens but keep the datasets separate. In a different analysis, we looked at 540 answers across 5 AI engines and 3 industries. The question here was not Google versus AI. It was whether the AI engines themselves relied on the same sources. They did not. Source overlap between any 2 engines ranged from just 4% to 19%. ChatGPT overlapped with any other engine by about 4%. Pairings among Gemini, Perplexity, and Google AI overviews were higher, around 14 to 19%, but still far from identical. Same category, similar buyer intent, different evidence entering the answer. This is why a single blended visibility score can hide more than it reveals. A brand can look strong in the average while being absent from the platform its customers actually use. It also explains why one piece of content rarely wins everywhere at once. Retrieval systems, indexes, answer styles, and source policies differ, so the right operating model is platform-specific. Run the same important prompts across each engine, inspect the actual sources, and treat repeated gaps as a signal. There is no universal number one result in AI search. There are multiple answer environments, and each one has to be observed. The same 5-engine dataset exposed another difference. Some answers show their sources and some do not. In this sample, 26% of ChatGPT answers cited no source. For Claude, it was 12%, Gemini was 2%, Perplexity and Google AI overviews were 0%. Those numbers describe this dataset, not a permanent rule for every answer those products will ever generate, but they make one distinction unavoidable. A brand mention and a citation are not the same event. In the same analysis, incumbent brands were mentioned 4 to 11 percentage points more often than they were cited. Their names could travel through the answer even when a source link did not. Challenger brands showed the opposite shape. They were cited as much as or more often than they were mentioned. Their evidence could enter the answer before the brand itself became the default name. That gives us two separate measurements. Mentions tell you whether the engine recognizes and recommends the entity. Citations tell you which sources are carrying the evidence. If you track only one, you cannot tell whether you have a brand memory problem, a source distribution problem, or both. So what should a team do with this? Here is the practical playbook. If you are an incumbent, defend the language around the category. Make sure the way independent sources describe you matches the way you want to be understood. Keep comparison pages current. Answer the high-intent questions directly. Strengthen the third-party evidence that connects your name to the outcome buyers care about. Your risk is being known but not being the source the answer trusts, if you are a challenger. Do not start by trying to outspend the category leader on every broad term. Find the buyer questions where the current source pool is weak, vague, or outdated. Publish a specific answer. Bring original evidence. Make the conclusion easy to quote. Earn corroboration in the communities, publications, videos, and comparison pages the engines actually retrieve. Your opportunity is to become useful evidence before you become the default brand name. For both groups, the operating loop is the same. Map the prompts, inspect each engine, separate mentions from citations, identify the recurring source gap, improve the underlying asset, and measure again. Generative engine optimization is not one trick. It is a feedback system connecting content, technical clarity, authority, and distribution. That feedback system is what ReachLLM is built around. The first step is to see the answer layer, how ChatGPT, Google AI overviews, Perplexity, and Gemini mention, rank, cite, and describe your brand across the prompts that matter. The second step is to understand why, which competitors appear, which sources keep returning, which questions produce the gap, and whether the issue is visibility, citation, position, or perception. Then you fix what the evidence points to. That might be an answer-first page, a comparison, a clearer product explanation, structured data, technical cleanup, a source-worthy piece of research, or independent outreach. Finally, you measure the same prompts again. Some teams want the software and their own operators. Others want managed generative engine optimization support across content, pages, schema, technical work, strategy, outreach, public relations, and social. ReachLLM supports both paths. The important part is that measurement does not end as a weekly score. It becomes a prioritized execution loop. See, understand, fix, measure. The engines will keep changing. The durable advantage is having a system that can detect the change, show the source behind it, and turn the signal into the next action. Here is the whole study in 4 lines. First, Google rankings and AI recommendations overlapped only 24% in the 50-question comparison. Second, the average AI answer drew from about 24 sources, and only roughly 1 in 6 AI-cited sources were top-ranked Google pages. Third, listicles, third-party blogs, YouTube, and Reddit were major parts of the source environment. And fourth, in the separate 5-engine dataset, source overlap was only 4 to 19%, so every engine deserves its own view. If you do not yet know where your brand appears, start with the baseline. ReachLLM's free report covers AI visibility, competitor share of voice, citations, prompt responses, and brand perception across the core answer platforms. There is no credit card required. Scan the code on screen or go to reachllm.com/free report. And if you want more research like this, subscribe. The next era of search will not be won by guessing what an engine knows. It will be won by understanding the sources behind the answer and improving them deliberately.